money becomes a limiting factor in your life. And so I'm really, really excited that there has many people who have chosen to let money not be that limiting factor of their lives.
I have money in the stock market currently. It's done decently well the last couple of years. Why would I want to invest in real estate?
Is that it's not only about how much money you make, but it's how much money you get to keep. Those capital gains, right, in your stock market could be offset with your capital gains, with your tax benefits from real estate. Like, we literally moved to Lubbock for 3 months in order to ensure that that project went well. We returned 60% of the capital in 17 months. People see the success, but people don't see the work that took for us.
What are kind of some things to think about between, if I'm a new investor, whether I want to go the route of being a general partner versus a limited partner and just investing funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it really depends on.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Apogee Wealth Podcast. Today is our first guest episode on the podcast, and joining us is none other than Paula Nichols, co-founder of Apogee Capital, and also my lovely wife. I figured it made a lot of sense to have Paula on as our first guest because she can give you all the details and behind-the-scenes information about Apogee and our journey investing in multifamily real estate. Also, she may want to have her own guests on the podcast in the future too, so it makes sense that you get to know her now. Paula, when I did the first solo episode launching, I was able to give everyone just a little background about myself and kind of my story, but would you like to do the same? Just take the listeners through who's Paula, where are you from, and how did you get to real estate investing today?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to get to know your community and get to join this podcast. I would say a little bit about me. I am Colombian, and you will probably hear that in my accent. My family and I moved to the US in 2006, and we came in with a lot of hope, and that American dream was like part of our story. Later on, I went to Texas A&M and majored in finance just because, I believed that was going to be the way to achieve success and, in a way, achieve the American dream through my career. After that, I joined a consulting company and focused on that. And during that time, I got to marry my best friend, Jonathan Nichols, and we both came to the realization of two things. One, we loved our careers, but corporate America wasn't 100% satisfying us when it came to our financial and our wealth plans. And then two, we had some time after work and we wanted to have something that it was like a project between the two of us. And that's kind of where real estate really entered our picture. It became that mutual hobby at the beginning of this is something that it can create wealth. And then also it's something that we can have in common. And so we started reading and learning. We read a lot of the books that you probably have heard of, like Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that's kind of how we started a little bit of entering the real estate through single family homes as well as small multifamily. I would say a few years later, we realized our wealth is growing much faster. So how can we make this into a business and how can we scale it? And that's kind of when we realized, okay, we have to build a business. This is no longer a hobby, but this is a full-time job. And we both left our careers to build Apogee. And that has kind of evolved into this multifamily private equity firm that we have today.
That's awesome. No, appreciate the story and the intro. Obviously, I've heard some of it and lived some of it. So, but hopefully for our listeners, that kind of helps them to get oriented. So what would you say you do on a daily basis in Apogee? Like, what's your role within Apogee and how do you help our investors?
Yeah, so I would say there is two main responsibilities, and one I'm focusing more during this season, but one that I really enjoy is talking to investors and really educating them about the opportunities that they have in order to access these assets and invest and be able to reap the benefits of real estate investing. That's one that comes very organically. Two, which is really my main role in Apogee, is the asset management. And so as an asset manager for our portfolio, I ensure that the business plans that we have projected in our pro forma are executed. And so we need to make sure that we're running our properties effectively and efficiently so that we can reach our NOI targets and be able to reap those benefits that we have projected for our investors. And what that looks like, it's really visiting the properties, managing the property management, looking at financials, looking at budgets, challenging numbers that you may not, really like or understand, and really looking for creative ways ways to maximize the NOI and cash flow.
No, that's a great summary. And, talking about the asset management piece of it, I feel like with asset management, there's a lot of people out there that can get to that kind of 80, 90% good level, right? A lot of people, hey, I got to stay on top of it, read the reports, ask questions, encourage them to lease, whatever. But I feel like the money's really made and the challenge is really in that last 10 to 20% of really just drilling in the details and being able to fully execute on what you said you would as opposed to just what's easy to obtain. Have you found that to be true, or am I off on that? Kind of what have you seen?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. I think that in a way and I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's very attainable to just like run your property at that 80% performance where you're able to just get the first bid and execute that, CapEx, or maybe you are just giving green light to the PM to with any updates on the financials. But I think it takes that really deeper layer of due diligence in order to ensure that all the things that you are spending on, all the income that you are receiving, that is being maximized. And as you said, like I think that last 10 to 20% requires a lot of time and a lot of in a way due diligence and judicious review of financials. Which is a little bit more reactive, but proactively really meeting with your people and ensuring that you guys are making those decisions the most optimal way.
What's the hardest part of asset management? Like, what's the most difficult thing on a week to week basis?
I think people. I think that knowing how to hire the right people and I think it's Good to Great talks about that, having the right person in the bus and in the right spot. I think that that's probably the most challenging because, sometimes when, the person, let's say the PM staff looks great on paper, but then when you hire them, they may not be a right fit. And so only by visiting the property, looking and having those weekly calls and doing this due diligence, sometimes you realize like, okay, like, you know what, this person was not the best fit for this position. And there is many, things that we have implemented to really vet this person, receive recommendations. And even at times, like it's just finding the right person. It's difficult, but I would say once you find the right person for the project, it makes a whole difference. It makes the projects run smoother, and it makes your goals attainable if you have the right, person in the right spot.
Yeah, that's really great. And one thing that kind of hit my mind is we do our investor webinars, and I tell investors straightforward, like real estate investing is risky. There is a risk with real estate investment. Real estate can be volatile. You can lose your money. All those normal disclaimers that everyone should be aware of, which is true. But the other side of the coin is that there's a lot of things we do control within real estate, right? We can make assumptions in the underwriting that are reasonable, and then we can manage to those assumptions at or above, which takes a lot of hard work. But the point being that there is a lot of stuff that we do control, and we have to make sure that we do 100% for our investors on those jobs. And speaking of investors, you mentioned up front how much you like speaking with investors. Who's an ideal investor? Like, what kind of stories are you hearing from people as they look to invest in a real estate syndication? In other words, like who's the typical avatar of an investor that you see?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the investors that usually come and, are interested in what Apogee offers is, busy professionals. So usually VPs or executives who have a very full schedule and they don't have the time to, focus on real estate, but have the resources to, in a way, and we can talk here in a little bit about hedging their wealth, right? And also taking advantage of tax returns. And so these individuals are usually very busy. Their schedule is already busy with work and also with family. And they don't have the bandwidth to be able to go learn, research, find deals, manage them, really gain the experience. And they also are in need and desire to grow their wealth exponentially. And so they want to be able to, leave a legacy for their family. They want to be able to have the freedom to choose when to retire, how to retire. And so these individuals are usually, I would say, busy professionals, between 40s and 50s, who are looking to expand their wealth and, in a way, are also open to something, more than the stock market.
So speaking of the stock market, like I'm an investor. I have money in the stock market currently. It's done decently well the last couple of years. Why would I want to invest in real estate?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that I am a fan of the stock market, right? My degree was in finance, even though my focus was investment banking. I think the stock market is great. It's a great tool to grow wealth and to make money. So I'm not against the stock market, but what as any successful investor will tell you, you have to diversify your investments. And so I would say making sure, I think that real estate is a complementary way to invest. It's also something that gives you access to higher returns at times. And so when it comes to the stock market, is are you hedging against the risk that the stock market may represent in your portfolio? And a way to hedge is to not put all your eggs in one basket, right? So that means that you have some of your wealth in stock market and you have some of your wealth in real estate. Another huge benefit of real estate is tax benefits, right? So when it comes to making money, you probably know this, that it's not only about how much money you make, but it's how much money you get to keep. And so in a legal way. And so real estate offers that tax benefit that the stock market does not offer. And so I think it's a very complementary investment, I would say, when it comes to your portfolio. And those capital gains, right, in your stock market could be offset with your capital gains, with your tax benefits from real estate. And so these are just really, I would say, complementary investment vehicles if you are looking to grow wealth.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Let's say that I'm a potential limited partner or potential investor, and I'm looking like, hey, am I going to invest with Paula and Jonathan? Am I going to invest with another group? What are kind of a few key questions that limited partners should be asking to general partners before they make an investment?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think that when it comes to vetting who you're investing with is one of our key questions. Like, what is their experience? What have they done this before? What is their track record when it comes to previous projects? I feel like that is, a really key question because, as you mentioned earlier, there are going to be challenges that come across, and what you want to make sure is that the team that you have entrusted your money to, that they're going to be able to do everything in their control and in their hands to make the project succeed. And so I feel like the who is so important, and that is a key part of that. I would say like what is like what type of investment are you looking at? What is the vintage? What is the location? And I actually have a free resource in our website where I've literally outlined the top 10 things that if I was an LP, these are the questions that I would ask, because you are trusting a group with your money. And I think the same way that we're talking about stock, you're looking about who is the fund manager and what are they doing, what is their strategy, is the same thing that you should look at this real estate investment and really understand. And I outlined 10 things that I think that are critical and that will really help you make your decision when it comes to your next investment. So you can go to our website, and I believe the file is called 10 questions LPs should ask.
I hope you're enjoying the content of this episode. I want to take a quick 15-second break to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Apogee Capital. Now, Apogee Capital is our private equity firm that we allow investors to participate in large-scale multifamily investment opportunities through. If you're interested in being a passive investor and would like to learn more, you can find information on our website, www.apogee.com. Link is in the show notes. Now, thanks and enjoy the rest of the episode. That's awesome. Pivoting just a little bit, but still on the topic of LPs, GPs. So, I run into a lot of people either on LinkedIn or meetups, and they have a bit of confusion, if you will, about do I want to be a general partner? And for those of you that are newer to multifamily syndication, a general partner is just a person doing the sweat equity on the deal, like myself and Paula, right? Finding the deals, running the deals, and from the outside, maybe it seems a bit glamorous. I don't know, but a lot of people are interested in doing that. What are kind of some things to think about between if I'm a new investor, whether I want to go the route of being a general partner versus a limited partner and just investing funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it really depends on where you are in life. Like, I think I mentioned it earlier. It's time, right? How much time do you have available? Because this is a full-time job. So, you and I do this full time, and I would say we work more than, 60 hours a week. And so each. And so when it comes to the availability and the time that you have to play with, I think it's really, really important. Two, it's also the experience. You may have all the time you want. Let's say you quit your job, you're going to be 100% in multifamily. It takes time to gain the experience and to be able to build the relationships that this business requires, right? There's a lot of moving pieces. So when it comes to brokerage relationship, vendor relationship, investor relationships, there is a ton of relationships that takes time to be built, and you cannot microwave those relationships. And so I think that that's the other thing to have in mind. Do you have the network to be able to pull this through? And then I'll say the second thing or the third thing that you might consider is just the financial investment. When it comes to investing in multifamily, many times Apogee puts $200,000 of risk capital that it's put in projects in order to close projects, and also need funds for liquidity. And so that is just maybe three things you can consider. It requires, I would say, this business is a great business. That's why we're in it. But it does require a lot of effort and sacrifice and a lot of knowledge in order to avoid costly mistakes that would ultimately impact investors' money.
No, those are some really good things to think about, and I would definitely agree. I mean, I think a lot of times the general partnership role is sold, maybe on social media or by certain people as, hey, just go get deals and sit on the beach, and that's just simply not what it is, right? And I would go so far to say this is just my opinion, but if you're thinking about investing, I would really encourage you invest with someone who is full time in the business. Obviously, everyone starts out. We did our first 1 to 2 deals while working W-2s, and we worked very hard at it. And now that those deals are full cycle and have exceeded projections, like it's great, right? But there's an inherent risk there when your asset management, your efforts on the project are coming nights and weekends, after you've given your best hours to your W-2. And I think that having someone focus full time really de-risks in a way your investment and chances of success on the business plan would be kind of my argument. What are you excited about this year? I mean, 2026, obviously, multifamily as an industry has been a bit frothy the last couple years. I mentioned we've had some successes, but a lot of people have really struggled. And so, what excites you? What concerns you in this year ahead of us, since we're still close to the beginning of it?
Yeah, I would say like there are external factors that I'm really excited about. I think the market has been a little bit quiet in the last, probably couple years. Not a lot of transactions, and I feel like now transactions are happening. I think that there is a lot of deals that we're seeing come through the pipeline, so I'm very, very excited about that. And I think that some of the sellers and including the lenders who have repositioned some assets are a little bit more open to reconsider the price. And so we are very, very excited for those kind of external factors of the economy and the industry allowing us to access deals at a better price per door. Internal factors for Apogee, I'm very excited that we are not necessarily, we're just growing in knowledge and network. And so I think that, Jonathan, you've developed a really, really strategic relationship with brokers and other industry partners that are really helping us in a way sharpen our skill and also have access to more benefits that will ultimately ripple affect the investors that have trusted us with their funds. And so I'm really excited on Apogee's growth and the way that we have positioned ourselves as like a trustworthy private equity firm for real estate in DFW. And it has been very encouraging for us to hear that from peers and partners and investors. And so I feel like a lot of the fruit that the seeds that we have sown, I feel like we're kind of reaping the fruit in 2026. It's already positioned itself to be a great year for us.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I'm also really excited, and there's been probably asset management has been challenging the last couple years with some of the stuff we've seen in the market. Just keeping occupancy up where we'd like it to be, and some of those issues. But overall, I mean, multifamily fundamentals are very strong. As you mentioned, there's an opportunity to buy some deals at a really great basis. Basically equivalent prices to going back to like 2017, 2018 timeframe. And it's hard to lose. You get something at the bottom of the cycle and run it well, it's hard to lose. And so there's always risk, but I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that there's a lot more upside right now. Kind of to that note, where do you see Apogee going in the next 5 years? Like where would you like to be 5 years from now looking back?
Yeah, I I have big dreams and I have big goals for Apogee. I think that we as we have continued to grow our portfolio and been able to deliver to our investors. And I have to say, this is all, it has been a lot of discipline, it has been a lot of work, but I believe that all praise goes to Jesus, because God has been the center of our business. And I think that he has walked us through a lot of things, and I'm excited that believe his plans for us are really, really big, not only from a size of portfolio, but also for the people that we're going to be able to impact. I do believe that we get to enable people so that they can leave their calling, right? Because if you're
Mm.
busy and concerned about money, you're not able to leave your calling, right? You're just too concerned. Your kids may not go to the college they want because you don't have money. You may not be able to, travel because you don't have the money. You may not be able to retire because you don't have money. I felt like those were challenges that the standard human being experiences, right? Money becomes a limiting factor in your life. And so I'm really, really excited that there has many people who have chosen to let money not be that limiting factor of their lives. And so I'm excited to see more and more people, in a way, try real estate and try investing in multifamily and really experience that, and have a little bit more freedom to choose their calling and to live the calling that they have had. So I would say for Apogee, I see us impacting more and more investors locally and as well across the US. And then also, I see us really becoming very specialized when it comes to becoming that source of knowledge, not only for our investors and as active investors, but if there were to be people who want to start as active investors in the business, become that kind of sounding board and advisory board for folks in our industry. And so I see growth, I see experience being gained, and I see more impact.
That's great. I mean, obviously, I share the same vision.
I
Since we're
hope.
partners, but I think that the way you communicate it, it's very unique and probably resonates with a lot of people, particularly the part about living your calling. I think everyone has dreams to do more with their life. Everyone wants to help people or do something exciting, go on a big trip, like whatever that dream might be. And you don't necessarily have to be in love with or tied to money to recognize that like having financial means can help you accomplish those dreams. And that's really what we're about at Apogee is helping you to grow your wealth, not in a risk-free, but hopefully a reduced risk manner, right? And get both cash flow from distributions as well as wealth growth through real estate investing. And so that's kind of our passion or our dream behind this company. You mentioned active investors that are just getting started, and obviously that's been a few years ago for us at this point. There could be someone listening here who their thought is, I want to go buy a single family house, or they could be, big dreams and like, hey, I want to go syndicate a deal right off the bat. But regardless, what kind of advice would you give to a new investor today? Or in other words, if you could go back and tell Paula something 7 or 8 years ago, what would you tell yourself?
Oh my goodness. I have thought about this question a lot because, I feel like I'm a pretty reflective person. So I like to reflect on like, what could have I done better? What is my blind spot today? And I didn't grow up in a family that owned businesses. And so it was very new, right? Both of my parents are my dad is a doctor, my mom's a dentist. Like they did not build businesses from scratch. And so all I've learned is through books and through people. And I feel like that's the part that I would change. I feel like I would have asked for help and paid for help if needed, um, much sooner than I did. Because not everything can be transferred through, education, but a lot can be transferred through education. There has been people who have gone through that journey before, so why not rely on their lessons learned besides paying the dumb tax? And so I'm very much more open-minded when it comes to opportunities to invest in my education, in my growth, in my knowledge, and also hiring the right people, right? So I think that people for me has become the core, not only the people who can help me by sharing their lessons learned, but also people who are part of my team and how am I vetting them and how am I picking the right and choosing the right people to be part of our success journey. So I would say people would be the biggest lesson learned. Just hire the right people from coaching or from mentoring or just to be part of your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the biggest, and I mentioned this to the listeners, on the first solo episode I did, but one of the biggest changes in mindset for me going from single family to the multifamily world was it's not a do everything yourself business, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of roles. There's finding deals, there's finding money, there's running deals, there's construction, there's property management. And it's almost a guarantee that you are not a fit for all of those. And so you really have to figure out like, what's my sweet spot? Like, where do I plug in? Where do I bring the most value to the table? And then you have to partner with and or hire people who are great at those other things. And so, I think a lot of new investors they see our business, for example, and they think like, oh man, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be a landlord or pick up tenant calls. And we explain to them like we use property management companies to run our deals on day to day, right? Like I don't pick up the call to lease. I'm not a lease expert. I don't pick up the call to figure out what the maintenance problem is. We have professionals that do that, which best serves our tenant and it also best serves our investors. And so I agree. Like the real key here is people and being able to use people, together and partner in order to accomplish your goals. We're going to pivot in just a second and I'm going to ask a few more like personal questions, but is there any other thing like real estate related you want to mention before we make that pivot, if you will?
Yeah, no, I would just say, for us in Apogee, we have three values that really drive a lot of our decision making. In one of them is excellence. And I think that we are very committed to that. And the reason why this was brought up to my mind right now is because what you were saying of like, hey, I'm not a leasing expert. I'm not, we hire people. And I agree. But I think that something that it has been hard, yet I'm something that I'm really proud of is that no job is too big for us, right? And so I think that when you start with this humility and this commitment to your investor, um, I think that it makes a whole difference because if we had to, which I think there has been one project I can think of that we have had, like we literally moved to Lubbock for 3 months in order to ensure that that project went well, right? And now we reap the effect of like, okay, yeah, like we returned 60% of the capital in 17 months. People see the success, but people don't see the work that took for us, right? They don't see us moving to Lubbock, and showing up to the leasing office every day and ensuring and firing PMs and hiring it was a lot of work. And you have to be, if you're going to be on the GP side, you have to be willing to do the heavy work, and the heavy lift for your investors, because when you say something, your word matters, and that's important. And so I would say like sacrifice, discipline, all of those things that are behind the curtain, are very, very necessary. And I would say if you're an LP, all I can, tell to my investors, like there is a lot of hustle that happen behind those investor reports that are sent monthly, right? There is a lot of, not only on the asset management, which is, report, and oversight, but there is also like hands-on as needed, because, we want to deliver excellence when it comes to our investments. And so I do think that it's fair to be clear about that it's not just sitting at an office and just pushing buttons and jumping on calls. I think sometimes it requires a little bit more hands-on, and you have to be willing to do that if you're jumping as a GP, in the multifamily side.
1,000%. Really, really great summary. Switching gears just a little bit now to just kind of a personal touch before we wrap up for the day here in
Yeah.
just a few minutes. Obviously, you've already mentioned spend a lot of time doing real estate. We both have spent plenty of weekends working on real estate, nights and weekends. And so my question might be a little bit facetious, but like, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? Like, what kind of things excite you? Where's your time spent? And just tell us a little bit about your life outside of work, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, sometimes the lines between work and life, like personal life, become a little bit blurry when you are married to your partner, business partner, and also when work, it's in everywhere. But I would say we are becoming a little bit more disciplined on that, on how to, we welcomed our first daughter 8 months ago. And so I feel like she has helped us really kind of refocus and create some boundaries too. And so what I do for fun now, I mean, she takes most of my fun time. And so seeing her growth has been, a huge blessing. And also, I would say like refresh and a new why we're doing this, why we're building wealth, why, ultimately like building legacy and offering things that not only financial things, but offering opportunities that maybe we didn't have growing up. And so I'm excited about that, and I enjoy spending time with her. And then even more selfish way, we love to travel, and so obviously that has been in pause for like the last year due to us welcoming our daughter. But we are excited to pick up maybe some travels coming up later this year. So spending time with you has always been fun. So let's travel more in 2026.
Sounds like a great plan. Yeah, thanks for joining today, Paula. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. I'll just remind the listeners, obviously you're a co-founder of Apogee, and I assume probably we'll have guests that maybe you want to bring on the podcast in the future. And so Paula will not be an unfamiliar face, I'm sure. If anyone wants to reach out to you, Paula, what's the easiest way they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is you can go to apogeemfc.com, and we actually have a form there. If you are interested in becoming a passive investor, you complete these like 3 questions, and you will have right away access to or my Calendly, and where we can have a 15-minute conversation just to get to know you, get to see if it's a good fit. And if you are interested in maybe more of a GP, kind of like advisory services, I'll be happy to, reach out directly if you send an email to info@apogeemfc.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Paula. We look forward to having another conversation with you in the future. I'm sure listeners have enjoyed it. And thanks, everyone, for listening in. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks for tuning into the Apogee Wealth Podcast. I certainly hope you found something valuable in this episode that you can take with you and apply to your own investing journey. If you found the show valuable, you can subscribe so you don't miss further episodes. And if you'd like to learn more about ourselves or our company, you can visit our website, www.apogeemfc.com. We have a ton of educational resources that I'm sure you'll find quite valuable. Until next time, happy investing.